Hi, and welcome to the Digital Experience Pulse. I'm Steve Hammond, Head of Product for Experience Cloud, and your host. Today, we're talking about the state of commerce. We'll be discussing how the COVID-19 pandemic is changing consumer behavior and what immediate and long-term impacts this will have on digital commerce, and of course, what that means for Adobe. Here to discuss digital commerce, the downstream effects caused by COVID-19, and Adobe's role in this is Jason Woosley, Vice President of Commerce. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, thank you, Steve. It's great to be here. Caught the episode last week and absolutely loved it, and really excited to kind of dig into a little bit about, how these changing times are impacting e-commerce operations and sort of commerce in general. I was actually gifted into the Adobe organization from the Magento acquisition. And prior to that, I've been building e-commerce systems for about the last 15 years. So have been very much around the block and seen all the great innovations and changes as we've gone through, really the last 15 years of maturing e-commerce as a primary digital channel. And then more recently, I've also taken on the role of applying unified developer experience across our entire digital experience suite, making sure that, we're the best tools to interact with from a developer experience perspective. And so super excited about that role as well.
Super cool to have you with us. Thank you. And your background in the 15 years of experience with commerce is, I think, really beneficial to Adobe and to the marketplace right now. We've obviously been going through a lot recently with some of the impacts on the marketplace from the pandemic and how we're all living different types of lives than we lived in the past. I kind of want to go back just a little bit here for the audience and reflect about the way that we were all feeling at the beginning of this change in our lives in this pandemic. And I wonder, Jason, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, as you were coming up on and hearing the news about everything that was going on, what were some of the feelings and thoughts that you had?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And, I imagine my experience is probably similar to that of many of our audience, right? I was confused, a little bit scared, and certainly the unknown is kind of one of those things that can lead to some very interesting decisions. And I'll give you a perfect example. I've never really considered myself a prepper of any sort before, but now I have a full outdoor garden and enough seeds to probably feed myself and my family many, many times over should things actually degenerate into an era where we go back to agrarian society. So I'm fully prepped for that now. And, there's just a lot of things like that I think are really interesting when you think about how your emotional state evolves so quickly in light of all this crazy information. And for me, it resulted in a whole lot of food stock. So eventually someday I will put it all to good use, I'm sure.
It's interesting that you share that view of the garden because, everybody probably had this go through their minds, just thinking about the way things were changing so rapidly and the way that the media was reacting to it. And I remember going to the store and there were bare shelves. Your mind goes to this place where you're thinking, what do I need to do to prepare for this? I actually found myself making some pretty ridiculous purchases. It was funny because it's so easy to buy stuff online that you think, oh, I need some of that and some of that and some of that and some of that. And pretty soon you get this huge shopping cart full of stuff. And online, for me, I made this really poor decision of buying a bunch of soup. I don't know why soup came to mind for me, canned soup. I thought, well, chili mac sounds like it might be good, on a cold night or something. And then like clam chowder and whatever, chicken noodle soup. And of course, I bought a few other things. But when these things started showing up at my house, my wife started looking at me like, what is wrong with you? And it just kept coming. And I just started laughing one day. And I'm like, I don't even know how much stuff I bought. It just started showing up. I didn't go to the garden, but it sounds like you didn't go to the soup. But everybody in the world was impacted by this. This is one of the first times that we've seen a global impact that completely transformed economics and marketplaces and people's reactions and the way people, spent their time. And I'm interested to know, what were some of the things that you saw brands do?
Yeah, you're exactly right. This is the first time, certainly in my lifetime, and really if you think back about how very few times we've actually felt like a global community and we've acted like a global community. It is a significant milestone and a very interesting shift in how we have started to think about these things. When you think about how brands have had to respond to this, they've gone through the exact same kind of emotional challenges that we have, trying to wrestle with what does it mean to pivot into something else. brands that have had probably the biggest impact are things like personal service brands and hospitality brands and places where all of a sudden the only commerce for months now has been digital commerce. And, that is something that we have talked about being an eventuality for a long, long time. But when physical retail, literally shuts down, that is when you start to see what a post physical retail model starts to look like. So watching these brands have to shift, watching, restaurants shift into being makeshift grocery stores and marketplaces, having take and bake, really taking their model, putting it on its edge and saying, how do I deliver value differently given these new circumstances? For me, it's always incredible to watch the ingenuity that comes to bear under these really high pressure circumstances. It's obviously got a flip side to that where, it is leaving a lot of merchants and especially physical retail really reeling from the challenges of change and just how fast they have to implement. So it's been kind of across the board. There are places where I think we're starting to see some business models that, may have been outdated before this pandemic really start to show that they're long in the teeth now, right? A physical retail model that's so heavily indexed on the in-store experience where e-commerce was really an afterthought. That model really start to kind of fall down. And that's where you think about the Macy's of the world, right? That do about 5% of their overall commerce online and 95% of it dependent on that store experience that is now, effectively gone. And we don't know what it's going to look like when it comes back.
And as we look at the trends, some of the words I've heard have been almost daily Black Friday like traffic for some of these brands, where it's just nonstop, full on, every day they've got full capacity of shopping online. What kind of brands have been dealing with that, and how have they been managing that well?
It's a great question. And you're exactly right. We have been seeing sustained Black Friday, Cyber Monday levels of commerce activity for several weeks now, right? Really going back into the March timeframe. We have watched this thing kind of build. And really what's amazing about it is Black Friday, Cyber Monday kind of stands out as this blip, right? This incredible peak. And, now we're actually looking at that as the daily norm for sites across our portfolio. And then if you double click into that a little bit and think of, which industries are really pushing those page views and drawing the traffic, it's the usual suspects. It's healthcare providers, the Walmarts and the Rite Aids and the basics and necessities providers that, again, seeing this emotional response to a pandemic, it's only natural that customers look and seek out these trustworthy brands. And you think about toilet paper being kind of the leading indicator, and truly walking into a grocery store and seeing empty shelves changes your mindset completely. It's not a pleasant experience. And when you start to see the pressure on the organizations that are trying to deliver these kind of essential services to really get good at supply chain efficiency. And the ones that do that well are, of course, the victors in this. And of course, the areas where we see the biggest challenges, I think, are durable good, high consideration purchases, right? Nobody's out buying cars right now, seeing a lot less of those kind of high consideration luxury good purchases. And frankly, it makes perfect sense as you look at, again, at the psychology of how consumers are responding to this.
I was living in Australia and I found that there weren't quite as many kind of drive-in type commerce situations where you could drive up and pick up what you're trying to purchase. Restaurants that didn't have that, you drive up to them now and they have curbside pickup, and Best Buy or other retailers have the same kind of thing. What kind of trends have you seen in this area of brands that have done this? And what are some of the things that you've seen work well in combination with online commerce?
I think what grocery stores have done in terms of pivoting their model to not being an in-store experience. And again, these are grocery stores that have invested in massive square footage of physical brick and mortar presence. And they're now transitioning that to a curbside pickup model. And the really sophisticated ones have actually leveraged some of the B2B capabilities of our commerce offering to interact with third-party intermediaries that are, delivery companies like Instacart and Favor, Grubhub. So they're taking care of creating this discovery opportunity for all of the consumers that may not have been exposed to. I'll take myself as a perfect example, right? I had never Instacarted groceries. I was always one of those guys that, felt like I needed to go in and, smell the fruit and make sure everything was fresh. And I wanted to look at all my meat. I haven't done that in months now, and I will likely never go back to doing that. Convenience has kind of won me over, and that's, I think, an area where you'll start to see more exposure to some of these new delivery and fulfillment models as a result of, consumers clamoring for touchless and socially distant, compliant ways to conduct commerce. So that's, I think, one area. And then, another area that's just seen massive change are government entities, right? If you look at our federal and local government model, we're seeing organizations that had never had the pressure to truly be a coordinating entity for the massive distribution of scarce goods like PPE and respirators and medical goods. Well, these government organizations are also having to spend, just an incredible amount of self-reflection and, transformation within them to become an opportunity to distribute and coordinate how all of these scarce goods get into their citizens' hands. So I think those two are kind of two great examples of where we've seen, significant pivots that will have, I think, durable impacts on commerce going forward.
So you just talked about government and we've spoken a little bit about retail. As we start to come out of this pandemic, as we start to see the recovery in the marketplace, what industries do you think are next up that we should be focusing on?
Well, I think hospitality will come back in a significant way, but I think it's going to come back in a different way, just like everything else. And part of our job as the purveyors of the digital experience and the transformation is to make sure that they're able to do that in a way that still provides that incredibly special feeling. And so finding a way to kind of navigate the new waters and just how much social distancing is necessary, I think that's an area where we'll see, very, very rapid pickup. Again, personal services, right? Things like nail salons and hair salons and massage parlors, their models are going to change forever. I think the waiting room concept is something that people aren't anxious to go back to. So, finding ways to get more precise and accurate with your reservation system and making it very, very easy for folks to either sit in their car or just arrive and walk in and immediately get to their services and minimize impact. I think those are the areas where we really start to see these kinds of durable changes and how this is going to impact us going forward. And frankly, a lot of it is going to have positive impact on our lives as well.
Yeah, I agree. The medical industry, where doctors are servicing and then helping support their patients through online channels, massively convenient. The idea of commerce helping to be able to schedule that out, prepare people in advance, make sure that they're notified, those are all incredible conveniences that will change the way that we interact with brands going forward. A lot of the businesses are turning to marketplaces like Amazon, and we have technology that can help provide integrations into Amazon or can provide standalone commerce. How can we connect into Amazon? What are some of the channels that you see there? And also, what are the ways that brands can work with or learn from Amazon as they're building out their own practices?
Yeah, and this is a great question. And I think it really does justice to the fact that Amazon is in a class of its own. I think it's important for us to sort of recognize that, whether you consider them a natural monopoly, whether you consider, their practices to be too big to sort of naturally have competitors, I think what we've got to recognize is that Amazon is touching everybody's life, and especially, but not uniquely here in North America. So when we talk to merchants about how to deal with Amazon? How do they participate in the economy that Amazon generates? We really talk about it's a necessary evil. As a brand, you will either have enough differentiation that you can ignore a marketplace, you can ignore billions of shoppers that are having access to your competitors' products. And there are some high-end luxury goods, again, go back to this kind of high consideration purchases. Those are, kind of good candidates for not having to participate in the Amazon model. For almost every other merchant, some degree of participation, I think, is really, really important. If for nothing else, the discoverability of your products and services in a marketplace that, frankly, Amazon owns the search for products now, right? It used to be Google owned the search for everything, but now more product searches actually originate in Amazon than they do inside Google. And that's something that as a retailer, you simply cannot ignore. The challenge and the reason that brands have a lot of frustration with how to deal with Amazon is Amazon does a terrific job of making the experience homogenous across all of their products and every single offering. And what that takes away from is a brand's ability to differentiate and really provide that experience that creates engagement. and high lifetime value for your customers. So we partnered with Amazon in a lot of really unique ways to try and help our customers leverage that incredible marketplace, but at the same time have the ability to take a branded storefront experience and draw customers from the marketplace experience into that branded experience. So you're able to provide the overall high brand engagement touch point that you want. And that's an area where Amazon's been really terrific in understanding that, hey, they don't really provide an opportunity for brands to be differentiated, right? They're trying to provide customers with the ability to compare prices very, very quickly on similar items. And they do a great job on that charter. And so Amazon's just incredibly well poised for this particular environment. And of course, on the flip side, they do have some exposure. But again, they're just a behemoth that you absolutely cannot ignore. Love them or hate them, Amazon is something that every retailer, every merchant simply must have a strategy to deal with and, go in good faith, right? There is a gigantic market there that you can't ignore.
Yeah, very insightful, and thank you. It's interesting because oftentimes when you think of Amazon, you think of kind of this exclusive marketplace. You're either on it or you're not. I was shopping for my daughter's birthday, and I found that a lot of the products that I wanted to be able to buy for her birthday wouldn't have arrived on time because the shipping times have changed dramatically as essential items were prioritized over non-essential items. And I found the exact thing that you just said. I went on, found some of the products that I thought were interesting, and then I actually discovered that I could buy directly from the brand that I was interested in purchasing a gift for my daughter for or through, and they were able to get me the product in a fraction of the time of Amazon. So it is interesting to see that model. That may not be the perfect example, but I've certainly seen that hybrid example several different ways. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, no, that's a great example, and certainly glad to hear that your daughter got her gifts on time.
Yeah, it was a poncho. She likes to go to the beach and she wanted a towel poncho. And it was actually like, I got it and it was super cool. Jason, it's easy for us to be thinking about the marketplace through our lens, which oftentimes is our kind of local environment. We have a lot of employees and we represent the company around the world. As you look globally, what are some of the differences and challenges that you see globally, and what could we be doing to address some of those global challenges and opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, having the global scope of this pandemic really, I think, illuminated just how similar our responses have been. So, in my perspective, there's actually been more similarities to how not only the population responds, but to the retail operations within each of those different regions. I think what we'll start to see is the reopening process and the re engagement of physical commerce will be staggered. There's lots of places where I think they're almost saying, hey, we don't see any new cases, and it is almost back to life as normal. So we're well positioned to support that transition back into, kind of everyday physical commerce as well as online commerce. And then other areas where it may take a little bit more time, I think we have a really good opportunity to continue to drive that digital transformation, to continue to help small businesses and local businesses pivot to help their customers in digital ways. There's certainly not a one size fits all. And, I think when we think about our participation in this global economy, it is, to my knowledge, much more similar than it is different as we approach how to take care of each of these different regions.
Wrapping up here, wanted to ask you a couple questions about our commerce products. And what would you say are the most important features and differentiating capabilities of our products today that our field and Adobe should be talking about?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I'd say that clearly now we have a mandate to help our customers affect their digital transformation, right? We are uniquely positioned for the reality of today where digital experiences are the currency of the future. And frankly, they're the currency of the now. And that's really what has changed so much as a result of this pandemic. The ability for Adobe Experience Manager to craft these incredibly engaging experiences, for us to analyze the behavior of your interaction with those experiences with Adobe Analytics, and to kind of put all that together in a unified profile that gives us more information about how to be relevant to all of our shoppers. That is the set of capabilities that simply no other vendor can touch. And it puts us in a very, very special situation as we start to see, what is guaranteed to be a kind of worldwide lift in investments in making the digital experience the leading experience for these new brands.
I agree. I think that concept of the experience driven commerce, the connection across the experience cloud, where you have the full spectrum of the ability to be able to advertise to the right individual and then engage them. And then as you're engaging them, that profile is shared through that experience so that their commerce experience is just as relevant, just as connected as every other experience that they're having with a brand. Those are very essential items and a really important part of that experience. So this has been a great way to be able to look at commerce, especially through the lens of what's going on in the marketplace today. Do you have any kind of closing words you want to share with Adobe in terms of, how we can reach our customers more effectively or connect with them in the best possible way?
We really do have, I think, a very unique opportunity to help customers and probably the most meaningful way that they will transform since the Industrial Revolution. This digital transformation that all of our customers are going through is so core to their ability to compete, to their ability to be a going concern. We're inserting ourselves in one of the most mission critical transformations in history. And I think it's an opportunity for us all to, one, realize the incredible opportunity we have here at Adobe, but also realize the responsibility we have to bring these best practices and all of these incredible capabilities right into the hands of the folks that are able to go do the craftsmanship with their brand and go bring all of that incredible value to the end users and the shoppers there. So my, I guess, parting message here is, commerce is about a part of the story. It's an important part. It's a transactional part. Dollars and cents flow from it. But it's all the behaviors and the combination of that behavioral and transactional data that truly allows us to have the level of insight into shoppers where we can help our customers optimize for the lifetime value of their target audience. And that is the holy grail for retail and the holy grail for experience delivery, as far as I'm concerned.
So this has been a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate the opportunity to catch up with you and understand a little bit more about the commerce space. Thankful for your teams and everything you're doing to help us keep ahead of the curve when we're looking at what we can do for commerce and for the retail space, and love the integrations that you're doing across the Experience Cloud. Thank you for taking the time with us today, and we look forward to talking with you again in the future.
Thanks so much. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Thank you for joining us today, and please stay tuned for our next episode. This is the Digital Experience Pulse.